All right. Welcome to the revision of Leading Safe. Let's start. Lesson 1 was all about understanding the big picture, right? So the first thing we saw was business agility and what is missing in business agility, why people are not able to deliver value. So we spoke about operating system, the dual operating system, right? That is the first thing. The dual operating system has two sections out there. The first one was something which is missing in most companies, which is value stream network. And the other one, which is already there in all the companies, which is functional hierarchy. The value stream network will focus on customer centricity. That's their area. The value stream network will also, the key area of key element of value stream network is speed and innovation. Whereas functional hierarchy will focus on efficiency and stability. The first. Then we spoke about the big picture. We said there are 3 layers, 4 configurations, and 7 core competencies. Okay. Out of the 3 layers, the layer which is mandatory is called essential layer. The other 2 are optional. So the combination of the layers will tell you which configuration you are in. All right. Then we spoke about the 7 core competencies. The 7 core competencies are extremely important in SAFE because they talk about business agility. If you really truly want complete business agility, you need to focus on these 7 core competencies. And these 7 core competencies are divided in 3 sections. One, the 3 of the core competencies are focused on execution. The other 3 are focused on strategy. And the core competency which is common to execution and strategy is called Lean-Agile leadership. Right? Then we spoke about the dimensions. So every core competency will have 3 dimensions. Okay, every core competency will have 3 dimensions. This is important for us to measure and grow. When we talk about agile maturity, we need to measure these dimensions and these core competencies to understand where we are and how are we maturing. So that is going to be extremely important for us to have. Okay. All right. That was the end of the first lesson where we spoke about these dimensions. We briefly spoke about what they are and how do we measure and grow. So in total, there are 7 core competencies and each core competency 3 dimensions. In terms of that, there are in total 21 dimensions, which is going to be measured and grow. Okay, that was the end of first lesson. Then we spoke about the second chapter, which focused on lean agile leadership. Okay, the lean agile leadership is the foundation of the whole work. If the mindset is not there, with leaders playing a vital role in contributing towards towards agility of the teams and their own, then there is no point in doing anything else. So lean agile leadership mindset is extremely important. For that, we need to focus on mindset and principles. So that was the focus of lesson number 2. So the first section of mindset and principle was about the core values of SAFE. So there are 4 core values of SAFE: alignment, transparency, built-in quality, and program execution. Okay. Then we spoke about lean thinking. Lean means reduce waste. So we need to understand how do we reduce waste. So we need to first look at lean thinking approach. And this is where we said house of lean. The roof of the house was value. And then there were 4 pillars. The first pillar is respect for people and culture. Second is flow. Third one is innovation. And the fourth is relentless improvement. And the foundation of the house was called leadership. Right? So that was part of the house of lean. The next part we spoke about was about the manifesto, agile manifesto. So there are 2 parts in the manifesto. The first is the value statements. There are 4 value statements, and the principles. There are 12 principles. All right. Understanding these value statements and principles is very important, but at the same time, recognizing that these manifesto was written 20 years back. In today's world, how things have changed. So how can we say that these manifesto principles has to be probably rewritten to some extent, has to be recognized as well, realized as well. Then we spoke about the SAFE principles. There are 10 SAFE principles, all right? And all those SAFE principles we went into detail on understanding what exactly needs to happen as part of that. Okay. One of the important SAFE principle, I mean, all of them are important, but of the important SAFE principle is principle number 8, which is decentralized decision making. Sorry, principle number 9, which is decentralized decision making. All right. When do you decide to centralize or decentralize a decision? So the answer to that is to recognize the kind of decision, the kind of work. So if the work is long lasting, if it is infrequent, and if it requires significant economies of scale, then it has to be centralized. Everything else should be decentralized. So we did a formula for that as well in terms of 0 and 1 on how to do that. That was lesson number 2. Moving on to lesson number 3. We looked at the big picture. We saw essential in detail. We drew it out. We divided it into subcategories and so on and so forth. We understood what happens at the team level, what happens at the program level. Those were very important ideas and concepts for you to realize, right? Recognize. So just to give a brief of that, at the team level, remember the snowman, right? The agile team is a combination of 3 groups: the scrum master, the product owner, and the doers who do the work, and the team who does the work, right? So this is the group which together we call it agile team. The size of an agile team is 5 to 11, which includes the scrum master and product owner. Okay. The backlog at the team level is called team backlog, of course. The team backlog contains user stories and enablers. What are enablers? Enablers are the supporting work, the back-end work, which is required for the story functionality to be complete. So there are 4 types of enablers: infrastructure, architecture, compliance, and exploration. These are the 4 types of enablers. All right. Then we spoke about the iterations at the team level, right? It's 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. That is what is recommended by SAFE, 2 weeks iterations. All right. Then we understood that, all right, team level agility may not be enough, right? Team level agility may not be enough. So if the work becomes complex, that's when team level agility starts having issues. That's when we need to scale. We need to introduce the program layer as well, right? The sub layer called program. So when do you know the work is complex? And when do you actually introduce the sub layer called program, right? And the answer is when you know there are about 50 to 125 plus people working together, because complexity and resources are directly proportional. More the complexity, more the resources. So if you have around 50 to 125 plus people, resources working together to deliver value to the customer, that's when you know it's time to scale. But scaling comes with some overhead. There are 3 new roles which has to be introduced at the program level. And those roles are very important for us to remember. Is the first is the RTE, release train engineer. They are chief scrum masters. The second one, the product management or product managers. They talk to the business owners, right, to understand the requirements. And the third are the system architects or system engineers. They talk about the technical architecture and the enablers that needs to be built at the architectural level. The difference between product owners and product managers, because product owners are at the team level, product managers are at the program level. The difference is product owners are tactical. They help the team with the requirements, whereas product managers are strategic. They talk to the business owners to come up with the requirements and understand and collaborate and create the roadmap and all those things. So product managers build the roadmap, whereas product owners contribute to the roadmap. The next part is agile team is extremely powerful because they are cross-functional, they are self-organizing, self-managing, and all those things. But a team of agile teams, they are even more powerful, and that is called an agile release train. ART. So Agile Release Train is a team of Agile teams, but it's not just a combination of Agile teams. It's everyone who is required to deliver value to the customer is part of this Agile Release Trains. All the relevant stakeholders have to be there. And the train has a capacity of 125 plus, right? That is the Dunbar's number in its own way, okay? Then we spoke about the cadence at the program level, and that is called program increment, PI. Now, what is the duration of a PI? 8 to 12 weeks, about a quarter. And there are iterations within the PI. So approximately there are 5+1 or 4+1 iterations within a PI. The +1 is called IP iteration, innovation and planning iteration. Okay. For PI to be successful, you need to plan for it. And that is why it is called PI planning. PI planning is the heart and soul of SAFe. It's very important to have that. It's usually a 2-day event, but it is customizable the way you want it based on the companies and the way the teams are distributed across the globe. Then we spoke about the backlog at the program level, which is called program backlog. And the program backlog will contain features and enablers. Features are broken down into stories, and that's how the requirements are distributed across. How do you know a requirement is a story or a feature? Because it has to be categorized, and we are the ones who categorize them. So the answer is stories have to fit in one iteration by one team, whereas features have to fit in one PI by one train, one Agile Release Train. That is the maximum. Okay, you can have smaller stories, you can have smaller features, no problem, but that is the maximum size. Then we spoke about system demo. System demo is nothing but the work the teams, individual pods, the individual teams are doing the work, but those work has to be integrated together. And that integrated work has to be demoed. That demo is called system demo. So system demo is nothing but integrated work has to be showcased to the customer. That's part of system demo. The frequency of system demo is also 2 weeks, ideally. But again, it all depends on the maturity of the company and their process. And that is one of the reasons it can be customized as well. Then we spoke about the architectural runway. I like to call it the tracks for the train. So there are a lot of work that needs to be done from architectural perspective, right? The prerequisites that needs to be in place, the environment should be ready, the database should be ready, and all those things have to be in place, could be part of the architectural runway. So enablers build the runway, and features and stories consume it. That's the idea. Then, so this is all part of chapter number 3 and 4 combined in its own way. In chapter number 4, in chapter number 3, we also spoke about a very important topic, which was about team topologies. There are 4 types of teams, okay? Stream aligned teams, complicated subsystem teams, platform teams, and enabling teams. So they are all 4 types of teams, okay? The reason for us to divide these teams is to, reduce dependencies, right? We are in the business of reducing dependencies, not managing dependencies. So we categorize them in such a way that people can be self-sufficient in its own way. The right support can come from different places, different areas, and that is why there is a clear roles and responsibilities defined in these types of teams. Okay. We spoke about XP practices. We spoke about built-in quality practices, which is very important. We spoke about Kanban in its own way. How should Kanban be done? How does it create visibility? And then we moved on to lesson number 4. Lesson number 4 started by the idea of customer centricity. So customer centricity is a mindset, number 1. Okay. The second is, why do we need to focus on customers? What are the characteristics of a customer-centric enterprise? Those are the questions we answered. Then we moved on to something called design thinking. Design thinking is, there are 2 diamonds. That's what I call it, the double diamond. The first diamond is the problem space. The second diamond is the solution space. Once we have a solution, we always need to think about, is the solution desirable? Is it feasible? Is it viable? And is it sustainable? These are the cube. This is the cube that you saw out there. And then we move to the next part, which is persona. Every customer is different. Their needs are different. The persona has to be identified. And then comes empathy map. Once you identify the persona, you have empathy maps. What do they feel? What do they feel? What do they say? What do they think? All those things have to be answered. And from then on, we come up with something called customer journey map. At every step of the operational value stream, you need to understand what kind of customers are flowing through this operational value stream. What is the journey of the customer? And how do they feel at every step? And based on that, you need to build a solution. And then the last part of that topic was user story mapping. From features, understand the workflow, come up with stories, and prioritize based on that. Then we move on to the next topic, which was estimation techniques. We spoke about planning poker. We spoke about how to do story points. Then we spoke about prioritization of those work as well. WSJF, which is cost of delay over job size or job duration. Job size is the proxy for job duration. Cost of delay is a combination of three components, which is business value, then time criticality, and risk reduction or opportunity enablement. After we calculate the WSJF value, we need to conclude, and the conclusion is higher the WSJF value, higher the priority. Okay. Then we went into PI planning mode. We went through the exercise of understanding how to do PI planning. We spoke about the outputs of PI planning, which is PI objectives and program board. These are the two very important outputs of PI planning. PI objective is nothing but an outcome of all the work that you planned for the whole PI. It is divided into committed and uncommitted. When do you say that a PI objective is uncommitted? And the answer is when the work that the team has planned, if the team is not confident of completing the work, encourage them to put it as uncommitted. Right? The confidence is not because of time, because the time they have already planned the work. They are not confident maybe because they are making too many assumptions. There is an external dependencies. They don't have the skills to do it. The requirement is not very clear, whatever it is, right? Those are the reasons mainly when they put something as uncommitted. Then we spoke about program board. So the program board, there are three inputs to program board. Very important. The first is the milestone. The second, not input, sorry, let me rephrase that. There are three things that you show on the program board, three elements of the program board. First is the milestone. The second is the feature. And the third is significant dependencies. These are the only three things that you show on the program board, nothing else. Okay. So those are the outputs of PI planning. Then we moved on to what we call it the events, right? Events of SAFe. We spoke about program Kanban first, where we track the features, and we spoke about the events of SAFe. One of the event is Art Sync meeting, which is a combination of two things, PO Sync and Scrum of Scrum. The focus is different for those, but sometimes the audience is the same. So you can combine the two as well, PO Sync and Scrum of Scrum. Then we spoke about the next part, which is IP iteration, innovation and planning. The plus one that I mentioned is IP iteration. So what happens in IP iteration? There are three things. First, it's a buffer for any leftover work. Second, it's a place for you to do the system demo, the final system demo, all the work that you completed. It's time to showcase the work. And the third is performance measurement. Whatever you showcased, when you look at the PI objectives, there is something called a business value, which is given by the business. Then you put an actual value. After the demo, you look at the actual value. How much actual value was delivered? That will be showcased by the business out there as well. So when you compare the planned business value and actual value, that's when you get a percentage achievement score. And you can get more than 100%. Yes, you can. When do you get a score of more than 100%? When the team not only achieves whatever was committed, but they also achieved what was uncommitted. So they exceeded expectation. So they get more points for that. So that's how they will achieve more than 100%. So after that, we moved on to an idea, which all these things are part of, by the way, inspect and adapt. Okay. So inspect and adapt is system demo and all those things that we just spoke about. Then we moved on to the concept of DevOps, right? We spoke about the calmer approach, CALMR. That's an acronym, the calmer, CALMR. And then we spoke about release, the CDP, continuous delivery pipeline. How does the requirements come, which is continuous exploration. Then you need to develop and build it and implement it. That is continuous integration. Then you need to deploy it in production. That is continuous deployment. And finally, you have to release to the customer. That is release on demand. Okay. Then we spoke about the last part was architectural runway, which already know we discussed. Chapter number 5 today, we discussed a lot of things. So we are good with that.